to Fake News Friday's official podcast. I'm Renee van der Westhuizen and I'm here in studio with my fellow journos, Ayanda Mtetwa, Annalule Ru and Bianca Tatiana. We're here to give you a little more inside info on what it's like living in a residence at the Northwest University, on any of its campuses. Today we're focusing on how much it costs to live in one of these residences. Obviously, you have to pay to be a resident in one of the awesome NWU hostels, regardless if you're at Vaal Triangle or Potchefstroom or Mafeking. But what we try to find out from students is what they actually know about the price of living here.
So what we did was to talk to students on all three campuses and ask them what they think they're paying. First we went to Potchefstroom, then we visited the Vaal Triangle residences and asked the same thing, and lastly we travelled all the long way to Mafeking.
I don't want to talk about it. I don't know.
So there were some really interesting answers, don't you guys think?
Yeah. What I found interesting was how the majority of the Potch students really have no clue how much it costs to be in a residence.
Yes, I wonder what the reason for that is. I mean, there are quite a few students on Potchefstroom campus who kind of have an idea of what they're paying, but most of them feels like they don't know. And on Mafeking and Vaal, the majority of the students know like the exact amount.
Well, we could assume that Potch students' parents pay for them and they're just not really that bothered with asking, which is normal, I guess.
I think so too, though on the other two campuses it does seem like the students might either have a hand in paying, like either having to give the information for bursaries or maybe paying an amount themselves. Either way, they do have a better idea of what the prices are.
It seems so, but I think we should backtrack a little on this whole subject and actually see what are the costs of living in the different residences on the different campuses. So I have here with me the official document for payable fees and financial rules of the NWU for 2018. These include the annual amount to be paid to live in a residence, and they are quite specific according to the different hostels actually.
Okay, so this is excluding registration fees and extra payments within the hostels and so forth.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. So on Mafeking, all the undergraduate residences are about 18,800 Rand per year, except for Lost City. Lost City is just a little more than 23,000.
But what makes Lost City so special?
I'm not actually sure. As far as I know, it's a fairly new residence on campus, which could make a difference. And they cater for 288 students, all single rooms, so...
That's not bad.
Yeah, then we have the first year residence on Mafeking, Nelson Mandela, which costs 23,000 Rand if you're in a single room and almost 17,000 Rand if you live with a roommate. And then the postgrad hostel is the one with the flats, which is 29,370 Rand.
That's quite a lot. So do Potch and Vaal's postgrad residences also cost that much?
Actually, on Potchefstroom, for pretty much the same facilities, postgrads pay a little less than 27,000 Rand per year to stay at Opirif.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and for all the sharing residences in Potch, in other words, double rooms where you live with a roommate, you pay approximately between 20 and 21,000 Rand. The single room hostels, which there are 4 of, cost a little over 22,000 Rand a year, and Soetdorings, which is the rugby hostel, is almost 23,000 Rand.
That's quite a lot of numbers. And what about Vaal?
On Vaal Triangle, they have very specific prices for the single and double rooms within the residences, if they have both. So to live on campus, you pay about 26,000 Rand for the single room hostels, and Kumba is more than 27,000 for a single room and 25,000 for a double room.
Okay, so, but they do have off-campus residences as well then. They have 5 residences.
They do. They have 5 off-campus residences, and for all of them, you pay between 21,000 and 27,000, single or double rooms.
Shoo, that's a mouthful. But now you know. And from what I'm hearing, it seems like Vaal Triangle students are, on average, actually paying the most to live in a residence.
Yeah.
Yeah, except for the postgrad res on Mafeking. That was like 29,000, right?
Yeah, that one is then actually the most expensive one, but I think on average Vol wins, with Potchefstroom in tow and then Mafikeng's other residences.
But isn't it weird then how many students on Val Triangle and Mafikeng think Potchefstroom students are paying more?
Yeah,
that's
that is
actually
weird.
cool. I think it's because Port is the biggest campus with the most students, and then people automatically kind of accept the facilities must be way better or something.
That's actually something that tickles me. Why do the prices look so different than the overall expectations? And what is the criteria for the setting of those fees?
That, Bianca, is a very good question. So here's a little surprise regarding the prices. Like many other aspects of the university, they are changing. A new aligned formula for determining the fees for 2019 is actually in the process of being developed. For a little more clarity on this, we spoke to Herman Stein, who's the Director of Business and Enterprise Development of the whole NWU. Mr. Stein's job is to provide direction to all three campuses regarding catering, hospitality, food and beverage, fleet, rental and residence services, and he gave us a lot of info on the criteria for the pricing. So the first thing we would like to know is what were the known reasons for the current differences between the residence prices on all three campuses?
So the campuses in the past determined their own prices. They did it independently of the other campuses. And one of the advantages of our new unitary institution is that the residences on all three campuses now resort under one department, and the same principles can now be applied to all three campuses. That's basically one of the main reasons why there are such huge differences in prices. The second one is that all the residences are responsible for their own financial viability and sustainability. So they had to collect sufficient income to cover their own expenses, own operational expenses, own salaries, own capital, smaller capital projects. And they also had to transfer sufficient funds into a maintenance reserve to look after themselves for the 10-year maintenance macro upgrades. A third reason, probably related to the age of the residences and whether there were recent upgrades made to the residence. That would then determine a new price and a new price structure for that particular residence. And lastly, I think the costing on the three campuses were never the same. On some campuses you would have electricity charges who were not on charge to the residents particularly, so that would influence the price. On another campus you would find that they had to look after all the expenses, and therefore their residence fee income would be more. And hence those are all the reasons for the differences in the prices on the campuses.
So what are the criteria that will determine the fees for living in an NW residence?
Okay, let me touch on the criteria, how it was derived firstly. So where we are now with our 2018 prices, I think the main idea there was the financial sustainability. And that was the reason then for the differences in prices. And that was the criteria that would lead you to determine the price. Was what does my expense base look like? What is my transfer to the reserves that are required? And then I would determine a price. And that was the criteria. We soon realized that when we wanted to do the alignment of the residence fees between the three campuses, we had to go and find specific criteria. Now there are a whole host of items, and I could use up to about 20 different scenarios of different criteria. We chose to only use 7 criteria for 2019 for determining a more aligned residence fee. And the 7 items that we used, which we as management at this stage believe these are the main items that should determine your price, was firstly, what is the distance that you are staying from campus? Right. The second one, are you staying single or are you sharing a room as a criteria? Then we had some sharing items. The first one was sharing a laundry. What is the makeup of the number of students that share a laundry, that also share a kitchen, and lastly also share a bathroom? So those an additional 3 items. Then we looked at whether you have Wi-Fi or not in your rooms. And lastly, what is your electricity arrangement? Do you pay as you use, or do you have unlimited access to electricity? So those are the 7 criteria items that we used for 2019. And each one of them has a weight. And then dependent on your specific residence, the number of students that are sharing those facilities, and whether you've got Wi-Fi or not, they all contribute to a factor which we call the facility factor, and that would then determine a different price, which will then be fair. If you don't have Wi-Fi, you'll pay less for your residence. If you have unlimited electricity, you'll pay a little bit more for your residence.
And what does the future look like for the NWU residential fees?
I think if I can put a personal feeling to you, is that Northwest University residence fees, if you compare ourselves to other residences in our sector that we like to compare ourselves with, our fees are low. We would like to increase our facilities, and in that attempt to increase the facilities and to stay with technology, we will probably have to look at our fees and increase that at a reasonable level. I cannot see that the fees will increase by more than the consumer price index going forward, and that would then also talk to you being able to increase your facilities. I think for the next 2 years, there might be a surcharge on some of the fees, on some of the residences, to assist with the alignment. If you look at where we are coming from, and to do the alignment in just 1 year won't be able to do that. So there will be another factor of the alignment probably for 2020, but thereafter I see the fees only increasing by the consumer price index.
Well, there we have it then. A lot of information that gives a little bit more clarity on why the prices differed, and also why it's going to differ in the future. There are a lot of elements to take into account, like having Wi-Fi in your room, having to pay for your electricity, sharing a room or having a single room, and the laundry rooms as well. There's a lot of elements that actually make sense.
I think we got a good load of information on the past and future cost for students on all 3 campuses to live in a residence. It's definitely an important part of your student life, since private accommodation is easily way more expensive.
So I think we got a good view on what the NWU residential fees look like, especially thanks to Herman Stein's information. On that note, since we have now come to the end of this podcast, we'd just like to thank Mr. Stein for being willing to talk to us and giving us that important information. We'd also like to give a huge thank you to the residential students on all 3 campuses who shared what they know about the fees, and also the Puck FM studio for the use of their recording facilities. Thanks to my fellow journalists Ayanda, Analu and Bianca, and I am Renee. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time for some more sneak peeks into the lives of residential students at the NWU.